Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel and welcome to day 7 of my 25 days of Christmas. In today's video we're going to be using this silhouette stamp set from Crafter's Companion. This came in a little bumper set in issue 100 of Creative Stamping magazine, and we're going to be creating a scene, so we're going to do a little bit of ink blending. So to begin with, I wanted to create a moon mask, so I did that by just putting together a few sticky notes, and they're the ones that have got the full stick on the back of them. I literally just used some washi tape to put them together and then die cut that with a circle nesting die. And I can pop that onto my piece of cardstock here that I'm going to be ink blending onto. This is cut to 5.5 inches because we're going to make a 6x6 inch card. So I wanted to use my Distress inks because I wanted to ink blend this background, and then when it came to stamping in black for my images, it would give a really nice solid impression. You wouldn't see any of that colour underneath. So I took out a few shades of blue that I've got in this range and then started with the lightest colour coming from the moon as if it was really nice and bright, and then was trying to work darker around it to create a nice dark moody kind of scene. And I was sort of going and going with it, and it was starting to look okay. And then I brought in my blueprint sketch, and you can see here there's just absolutely no ink in this ink pad whatsoever. It's completely dry. You can see I'm popping my finger into it. Totally just unusable. So I had to switch over to my oxides, which I really didn't want to do. That's why I picked my inks to begin with, but I, had to just change and kind of make the scene that I wanted to make. So I pulled out some of my Distress oxides. This one here, I believe, is Prized Ribbon. I can't 100% remember, and I had quite a lot of blue inks out on my desk. So again, I started with a darker colour and then moved into lighter colours around that moon mask. So the one thing I just want to sort of talk to you guys about while I'm doing this bit of ink blending is the importance of making sure that you have really nice juicy ink pads. So if you're trying to ink blend, if you're trying to stamp with them, your inks are going to run out. A lot of these inks you can buy refills for. It can be beneficial to buy a refill when you buy an ink pad. I've had a lot of mine, and I kind of forget this. I've had mine for so long now that it's inevitable that they are going to start drying up and that I'm going to have used a lot of the ink. So do keep that in mind when you come to buying ink pads, is think about the refills as well. So you can see I did a little bit of ink blending. I spritzed it there. In this bottle I've got a little bit of the Cosmic Shimmer mica powder mixed with a little bit of water just to react with that ink a little bit, but then also to have a little bit of sparkle for our background. So I've taken the moon mask off and you can see just how sort of bright that is. I took a lot of the ink off my brush and put that on the moon, sort of like started coming in to kind of blur that edge a little bit. But then I brought in a colour that I hardly ever use. This is Pumice-Stone, and I just took a clean brush and just really lightly, well, I tried to go as lightly as I could over that moon, and it just kind of dulls it down where it wasn't so bright white. And yeah, I think it looks really good. So I left that little bit at the bottom as well, that little bit of a white bank. It's going to be a nice snowbank. I didn't bother masking it off, which I could have done, but I just left it. It's a little, I don't want to say stringy. It's a little sort of not perfect, but I'm absolutely okay with that. If you want to have that perfect line, then you can mask off that bottom portion. So I'm just arranging some of these stamps, first of all, just to kind of see how I want my scene to be. I'm not going to put a sentiment on the front. I'm going to stamp one on the inside, which you will see. But yeah, it's always a good idea just to kind of work out what you want to stamp first of all. All of this is going to be stamped in black, so I don't need to worry about masking anything off. But I am going to put it into my stamping platform. And I'm doing this because I know I'm going to want a double stamp. And I know from past experience that when you stamp sort of like black solid images onto Distress oxide, you can see it a little bit. You might be able to tell in this video, you might be able to see at the end a little bit. That's why I opted first of all to use the Distress ink, because it doesn't really show through quite as much. So I did stamp this quite a few times because I wanted to try and get as much of a solid image as I could. And I actually found in the back of my drawer, I had a Ranger archival ink in the jet black. And I thought I would give this a go to see whether I could get it to go right over that distressed background. But yeah, you can still see it through, but I'm still really happy with how the card turned out. So I'm going to rotate this in my stamping platform because I'm going to have some of these trees coming off the edge, and it's just easier to kind of rotate the card. And I'm also going to stamp our Santa and his sleigh as well. So this is a really basic card, but I always love ink blending. I haven't done tons of it a lot recently, and I really wanted to kind of get back into it, use up some of my inks again to stop them from drying out and being able to actually use the ink that's in them. But yeah, it's something that I have always enjoyed. So the last thing I'm going to stamp is our big Christmas tree. So we've got that little Christmas tree, or just a tree, in that background, and then we've kind of stamped over it, but that's okay. It's given that little bit of depth, and you can see that the reindeer as well are not on the same kind of level, so it gives it a little bit of depth to your scene. So I'm going to let that to sit and dry. That archival ink really needs to sit and dry, so I've left that to one side. I'm going to trim down a piece of cardstock. This is some sort of like rainbow holographic card from Hunky Dory, and I've cut this to 5 3/4 square because, again, like I said, I'm going to be making a 6 by 6 inch. And for this, I wanted to make sure that this stayed down nicely. You know, recently I've had some issues with like my glues showing through papers and things, so I'm trying to be a little bit more cautious at the moment. So I used some thick double-sided tape onto the back of that, and I'm going to use some double-sided tape for this as well because I am using my heat tool just to help dry. The majority of this is dry, but just to really help finish it off, make sure I don't smudge anything, because you want to be careful. You don't want to spend all that time creating something and then at the last moment kind of ruin it, which I'm sure I've certainly done it loads of times, and I'm sure we've all kind of, dropped an ink pad or smudged something that we spent a lot of time working on. So again, because I use my heat tool, it's going to be a little bit rippled. So again, I just added some double-sided tape onto the back of that. And then rather than kind of putting my hands all over it to make sure it's lying flat, I just used a paper towel. You can see nothing's coming off there, but it was just to stop any fingerprints, any smudging and things like that. So as I said, I'm not putting a sentiment on here, but I decided to add some gems onto this. I do wish that I'd altered the sizes a little bit and maybe used the smaller ones rather than these medium-sized gems. But I added, I think it was 7 in total that I added to the sky, just to, add a little bit of dimension, add some ink, a little extra to it. So I'm just kind of faffing with it a little bit. It took me far too long to really work out where I wanted to place them. I then went down to 6, and then I brought in the 7th one again. So, when we get to that stage, we can kind of have an idea in our head of what we want something to look like. But as soon as we put it down, sometimes it takes a moment for us to work out the proper placement that we want something. So I'm just going to glue this down. This is some Nuvo Deluxe glue in a fine tip bottle from Crafter's Companion. And if I can find links, I don't know if I'll be able to link the stamp set, but if I can link anything else, it'll be in the description box down below for you guys. And as I said, we're going to stamp a sentiment on the inside. So this is actually a top folding card. I wanted to create something a little different. And so the stamp set that I put inside here is, I think it said Shine Bright, I think. Let me just double check. Making Spirits Bright. I know it had the word bright on there. And I'm also going to stamp that large Christmas tree as well. So you don't always have to put a sentiment on the front of the card, but I would then highly recommend stamping something extra on the inside of your cards. And again, then you can use any of the images that you used on the outside of your card to help decorate the inside. So this is just going to come in and off the edge. So that is it for this video. So again, that was issue 100 of Creative Stampin'. That was a little while ago now, but an absolute bumper pack, and it's still a fantastic stamp set if you do still have that one in your stash. So that's it for this video. Don't forget to join me tomorrow for day 8 of my 25 days of Christmas. So that's going to be it for this video. Thanks very much for watching, and Merry Christmas.